I'll call the Pennichuck Special Water Committee to order at 7:30 on October 30th, 2019.
6:30.
At 6:30, we never meet at 6:30.
I know.
At 6:30 here in the Aldermanic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman David Tenza. Alderman at Large Ben Clemens. Alderman Richard Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Patricia Klee is here. And Alderman at Large. Oh my God.
Lori Wilshire. Present. And Alderman Tenza has joined us. Okay, so we do have a quorum. Public comment. Seeing none, communications.
There be no Pennichuck Corporation quarterly report to the sole shareholder for the quarter ended June 30th, 2019.
There being no objection, I will accept the communication and place it on file. Did you want to discuss the quarterly report with us?
Sure, to the extent you want any questions answered, that's fine.
What's the committee's pleasure?
I'm all set.
Okay, well, we will ask you to come up and we'll talk about the company's move, headquarter move. Look at that, saved you a whole 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. And the green light's on, this microphone is on, correct?
Correct. It's
Got it,
always on.
great. Thank you. So here tonight, representing the corporation, our Chief Operating Officer, Donald Ware,
Good evening.
Chairman of the Board, Jay Leonard,
Good evening.
and myself, Larry Goodhue, CEO and CFO and Treasurer. Also in attendance with us in the gallery are members of our board and management staff. So Steve Genest, who's a member of the Board of Directors, John Bovair, who is Chief Engineer,
Welcome.
and George Torres, who is our Corporate Controller and Chief Accounting Officer.
Thank you all for being here this evening.
Part of the reason for them attending is part of our long-term succession planning objectives at the company is to make sure that we're training other individuals in activities that are necessary to the operation of the company and making sure that they have institutional knowledge on a personal basis relative to what we do and why we do it.
Very wise,
Thank you.
obviously very wise. So who's going to take over the discussion on the move to Nashua? We're excited about this. You're still coming, right?
It is coming. So, Jay, do you want
Larry.
to say something up front?
I will only say that we're excited about it as well, but Larry knows the details. Larry, my hat is off to Larry. He's been working very hard on this project over a year and a half, probably. We're happy with how it has developed and come out, and we feel very confident. There's a lot of, we can't just move. We have to be able to move in a way that will get approved by the PUC. And it's not a simple, straightforward process as a lot of business folks might expect. So we've worked hard at it, and Larry has spent an especially great amount of time on it. So let me have him answer whatever questions you may have, but we are excited.
Yes, and I'm trying to think of the exact time. Probably 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, we actually had a groundbreaking ceremony at the site. This move became official on basically October 1st. The company has current lease facilities at 25 Manchester Street in Merrimack, New Hampshire, for which we are under a lease obligation through July 31st of 2022. But in our last extension of that lease, we had agreed to an opt-out, an early opt-out that could happen 2 years prior to that, so July 31st, 2020, which gave us the opportunity to look at what long-term solutions might be available, specifically within the confines of downtown Nashua, as was requested by the city for us to consider. And as I mentioned to the mayor at that time, that we would definitely look at all alternatives, but it had to fit into all of the requirements that we would need to meet regardless of where the headquarters would be found. It would have to meet our geographic constraints as far as access to all of our customers. We serve customers in 30 communities in the state, so it would have to have good access to a highway that would get us to those customers. And not for nothing, kudos to the city for getting the Broad Street Parkway completed. So, I mean, if you think about that one project, that made this site actually a very favorable site for us, because the Broad Street Parkway comes in within about a block and a half of that, and our access to the highway to get to all of our customers and everything that we do for business, that became a positive in looking at that site. It had to be something that could meet all of the safety, security, and space needs of the corporation. So that was part of the evaluation. And lastly, and probably most importantly, it had to meet the economic factors that needed to be considered relative to the cost of occupying a new facility, not just now, but for the long term. Don Ware and myself actually met with the owner of this facility in September of 2017. Yes. So we'd been looking at a number of sites in the city as possible locations. He invited us down to take a look at this building. We looked at it as being structurally sound. But we needed to assess it against our business needs. So first thing we did was we gathered some plans of the building as far as its footprint and tried to lay our business operations over that footprint to see if it might work. The first answer was, no, it doesn't. It was insufficient space. So I went back to him and I said, look, it doesn't work as is. What are your thoughts? He said, well, what if I built an addition? Can that work? If we add to that space on this footprint, could that work? And so we looked at those alternatives and were able to come up with a footprint within the constraints of what he would look at as far as an addition that he could build that would work financially on his side, financially on our side, relative to this process. And this went back and forth many times, involving all the members of our management team, looking at how our business flows, what our needs are, everything there. And then as we got along further was to look at it, at the overall economics of what might be in a lease cost. I had given him some early bogeys that he needed to meet. But then one of the things that we had to look at is what was going to be the cost of property taxes relative to this facility too. So again, I'm working with the city and having them look at what the assessed value currently would be and what it would be to get some information so I could use some hard data from them as to how the numbers all work. It finally came together. And so then the last part of it leading up to the actual notice was negotiating a favorable lease agreement. And that lease agreement had to be a workable document prior to September 30th, because that was the deadline for which I could give notice to our current landlord for the early termination, which we had renegotiated to be December 31st of next year. So at the end of the day, I was able to give notice on September 30th to our existing landlord, bind a new lease on October 1st. That new lease basically allows us to gain access to the space sometime after October 31st of next year, but no later than December 31st of next year. And then we will be under a lease that begins on 1/1 of 2021 for a period of 15 years with 3 possible 5-year extensions that could make it up to a 30-year lease term for this property. We're looking at a property then again that meets all of our current needs and anticipated moderate growth needs over the next 15 to 30 years. Meets the safety and security requirements that we have for our employees and our customers in coming to the site, and again, had to meet the geographics of what would happen. So the site is being reconstructed in its totality. The parking lot's being redone. There's going to be a new addition built onto the building, which has covered parking for 17 spaces underneath offices. It's intended to look like it was always there and contiguous with the existing building. The existing building is being gutted and completely reconstructed to our floor plan needs for all of our operations relative to the building, to the business. I've had ongoing discussions with the construction management firm, which is North Point Construction over in Hudson, and the landlord relative to the plans, the designs. They're working on getting some final permits in place relative to the demolition and relative to actually pouring the foundation and the structural steel for the addition. And they will do as much of that work they can this year prior to snow flying. During the winter, they will spend the time inside the existing building, gutting and rebuilding that. And then once the weather clears in the spring, We'll continue the construction of the addition and building that all out, all towards the goal of having the building basically done the beginning of October with punch list items to be addressed in October of next year, and us occupying the building sometime, hopefully in early November. And then we will have some free rent period until December 31st because we are still obligated under our current lease until December 31st. We don't have a doubling up. We were able to negotiate that with them. So all in all, a very favorable outcome. And we're looking forward to this completed space. We've got some images that of the facility that we shared at the groundbreaking, and we will probably at some point in time put that on our website so that it's actually there for people to see. So if you've got any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that kind of gives you I guess, a walk through the process.
So how many employees will occupy that building, and that's enough
Somewhere
parking?
between 60 and 70 employees, yes.
Okay, that's enough parking with the parking you're going to
There's
have
52
underneath.
spaces on the site itself.
I'm sorry, how
So
many?
52.
52, there are that many?
So, long story short, there are some parking spaces that actually border the oval that we might use, and/or certain members of the management team may elect to park a half a block up in that open parking lot or in the parking garage at the top of the hill. And then if there is some developments from the city of doing anything with West Pearl Street and you square off that lot, maybe we can talk about some additional pavement on a little corner there that would give us everything we need on that lot. So, but we'll leave that for a future discussion.
We'll keep that in mind. Good to know, good to know. Questions from the committee? Alderman Tenza?
Thank you. So you'll obviously have other operations for elsewhere. These will just be
Yes.
a corporate headquarters.
Yes.
Do you keep that 25 Manchester Street, or do you have?
25 Manchester Street will be abandoned. This will be a headquarters move. Our other primary locations are our water treatment plant, which is on DW Highway, or is it called 1 Concord? 200 Concord Street. It's in North Nashua, right on the border of Merrimack. And then our operations building at 16 DW Highway is, I'm going to say, in Baja, Nashua, just across the Pennichuck Brook in very southern Merrimack on land that we own. We also have a water treatment plant facility in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. As far as I'm going to say our main owned facilities. We have booster stations in other facilities throughout our service territory.
If I could just make a comment and just thank thank everyone at Pennichuck for making this work and making this possible. The plans, and I was at the planning board meeting when the plans came through. I've always been concerned about that parcel of land on Walnut Street and what we could ever do with it to make it anything other than the district court that was there now. The plans that are provided in the new facilities are really, an amazing feat, I would say, to have something fit in that area that is going to look, nice for that parcel of land, which is right in the middle of an intersection. So, it's amazing that this work is working out. I think, like you said, it's showing other businesses that, coming in having a headquarters downtown Nashua is a good investment for your business, the people that work for you in downtown Nashua. So, thank you for all the hard work you put into making this happen.
And I'm going to say it's a collaborative effort. I did take lead from the company perspective, but every member of my senior management team was well participative in this. Board as well. We were checking progress all along the way. But I also would give some credit to the landowner and developer, Rob Parsons. He had a very, very sincere desire to see us located there. When we first met with him, he actually had a lease agreement in his hand. He was ready to sign the next day with another concern who was going to take occupancy in that building. And he said, if you've got some interest, I will put this on ice because I want to talk to you. So I give him some credit because every time we found an obstacle, he helped me find a way past the obstacle. And so I think that that's credit that is well deserved for him as well.
Well, kudos to everyone. Alderman Clee?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
thank you. And yes, I also want to echo Alderman Tenza's remarks is that the plans and everything, all the work that everybody's done has been amazing. I know when I got the tour of your first headquarters, the current headquarters, one of the things you talked about that was extremely important was security and safety of the people there. When you're redoing all this, that is one of your first concerns.
It
I'm
is.
just speaking this for the public to hear this because
Yes.
I want them to understand that that's always been one of your concerns.
Absolutely, it is. All considerations have been given to this facility to maximize anything that we can do to make sure that we're providing for a safe environment for our employees and for our customers as they interface with us and we operate as the regulated water utility in this area.
Thank you very much.
Nice. Alderman Dowd.
Just a question, are you going to have an office that people can walk into if they have questions about their water bill or water in general? Because
Yes.
I think some people, that's pretty important, because I think up to now, they weren't quite sure where you were located. But I think that would go a long way as far as communications with the public, and so.
There is
That's good to
actually a
know.
designated room right off of our entry lobby that is specifically designated for private meetings with customers and our customer service group and/or other departments as needed. Again, it is integral to access relative to our security, but a specific room is provided for that, as well as a specific room. John Bovair and his engineering team has to meet quite frequently with firms that come in on bid openings and bid proposals. And so there are provisions there for them to come in and interface on project basis relative to those responsibilities as well.
Anyone else? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming this evening and updating the committee and by virtue, the city.
Just wanted to
Thank
give
you so
you
much.
perhaps kind of an insight as to things that might be forthcoming in future meetings. Number one, we plan to meet with you quarterly to go over the quarterly results.
Thank you.
Number two, as you know, anytime we have any financing that we have to do, we need to come before this body. We will be doing an annual debt issuance for our Pennichuck East utility sometime next spring, which we will be coming to you. We're also going to be preparing a financing approval with the PUC and before this board for our next multi-year bonding authority for our funding capital for 2021, 22, 23. That'll be coming sometime in the spring. And nothing else specific at this juncture that I know of, other than we'll have our annual shareholder meeting the beginning of May, as we do. One thing I will tell you is that we're going to be moving the site and location of that to one of our owned facilities, starting with this next year's meeting. So,
Very nice. Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, so Alderman Clee and I probably have a little interest in your 21-inch pipe project going on up Tinker Road. How's that progressing?
I'll have Mr. Ware respond to that.
Sure, this is kind of the glorification of the uninvolved because I don't run the engineering department anymore, but John's sitting behind me and he can stab me in the back. But, basically that project, as far as a pipe laying perspective, will be done on the Tinker Road area. We'll be activating the 24-inch line on Friday of this week.
Oh.
We will be, then they'll be disassembling the yellow line, the temporary pipe that's up on top of the ground in that area, and that will officially again be online this coming Friday.
Good, okay, great.
How timely, Alderman Dowd.
Isn't it?
Alderman Clee.
Actually, I'm glad that Alderman Dowd had brought that up. I don't mean to put any of you gentlemen in an uncomfortable situation, but you've probably already been getting the emails and so on about wanting to have a bike lane or a path in through that area. I know it does not belong to the city. I want that to be very clear. It belongs to Pennichuck, and I think that that's kind of a misunderstanding that the public has, is why isn't the city forcing Pennichuck to let us have a path through there? And if you're not prepared to answer that question, I understand, but
Actually, that's the first I've heard of that, Patricia.
it is. I
yeah,
thought
Alderman
you had been on an email with one of
No.
my constituents.
Yeah,
that had
I
brought
don't
that
recall
up.
that. If
Okay.
so,
Yeah, that is one of the things that they had hoped for, was to, where you had cleared on Manchester Street, I believe, and even onto Tinker and so on. And I have explained to them over and over again that that's what, it is not city land, it is Pennichuck land, and they are not the same.
Alderman Dowd.
When constituents asked me about it, I said that fence is there for a reason. It's a public water area, so allowing people to walk or bike on the other side on your side of the fence is probably not gonna happen. We are gonna be, I talked to the Director of Public Works today, we are gonna clean up the area between your fence and the street, so it's more presented to the neighborhood, because, you know, unless they dug it down and built a wall up to the fence, you can't put a bike lane in there, and so.
And just know that all of that fencing is going to be replaced, how soon, Mr. Bove? Within the next month, month and a half, before winter. All of that fencing is being replaced, so even though much of it is still, I'm gonna say rust-free and in good shape, it's a little bit bent, and needs to be replaced.
That was all those trees you cut down that fell on it.
That does happen somehow.
Anything further from the committee, from Pennichuck? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for being here, all of you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Unfinished business,
None?
new business,
None.
public comment. No public comment, remarks by Alderman. No non-public, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion is to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned at 6:51 PM. Thank you, everyone.